Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We are holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav. We'll be learning today Mitzvah Hashem Daf Yud Amud Aleph. We pick up today on Daf Tes Amud Beis with a new Siman, Taf Kuf Lamed Tes. Of course, we're continuing to learn the halachas of Chol HaMoed. And here in Siman Taf Kuf Lamed Tes, we have Dinei Haschayra B'Chol HaMoed, the halachas that govern the conducting of business of any kind on Chol HaMoed, Uba Yudal Seifim, and here in this siman we have 14 Seifim. Says the Mechaber in Sif Aleph, Kol Sechaira Asura Afilu Kol Shehu. The conducting of any business is forbidden, Afilu Kol Shehu, even in the most minute amount. So even to do a Shava Pruta, even to do a tiny amount of business is forbidden on Chol HaMoed. And says the Mechaber, Bein Liknois, Bein Limkar. This includes both purchasing items and selling items. Let's take a look right away in the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Aleph. The Mishnah Berurah says, Chayra Asura, it is forbidden to conduct business on Chol HaMoed. Why is that? Mipnei HaTorah, because of Tercha. We don't want you to be busy. We know, we've discussed already many times, that not only is malacha forbidden on Chol HaMoed, not only what we typically understand as being malacha, like making a fire, or the malacha of haitzah, or cooking, or harvesting, all of these things are malachas that we know are forbidden on Shabbos or Yom Tov. But there's also a category of things that are forbidden on Chol HaMoed, and that are things that involve tircha, things that involve too much exertion or too much busyness. Like the Aruch HaShulchan says over here, the Aruch HaShulchan says the reason schayra, the reason business is forbidden on Chol HaMoed, and the reason why it's forbidden even in the most minute amount, the Aruch HaShulchan says, Du masa umaton ein loy kitzva. There is no measurement to doing business. How are you going to measure an amount of doing business? V'im tater kol shehu, if the Chazal felt that if they would allow, if they would render permissible, even doing a tiny amount of business on Chol HaMoed, memela sheyigrar oid, you're going to end up doing even more business. Ubazeh garua mimalacha. And in this sense, says the Aruch HaShulchan, doing business on Chol HaMoed is even worse than doing malacha on Chol HaMoed. When it comes to doing malacha, it's okay. If you want to pick an apple from a tree, that's malacha. But if you pick an apple, so you picked an apple. But once you start getting involved in your business, once you start getting involved in doing deals and buying and selling, before you know it, you're going to be busy with it the whole day. And let's remember what we've said already many times since we started learning Hilchas Chol HaMoed. The reason malacha is forbidden on Chol HaMoed is because Chol HaMoed is supposed to be a time for Simchas Yom Tov. It's supposed to be a time for enjoying the Yom Tov. It's supposed to be a time for spending more time in shul, davening. It's supposed to be a time for spending more time in the Beis HaMedrash, learning Torah. It's supposed to be a time to spend time with family, enjoying Yom Tov. It's not a time to be doing business. If you're going to do business, it's going to turn into a weekday. So the Chazal forbade doing business on Chol HaMoed, even in the most minute amount. Continues, I should say over, there's a beautiful Gemara in Moed Katan, wrote it down over here on the side of my Gemara, on Yud Amud Beis. The Gemara relates a story with Ravina. The Gemara says that the Amora Ravina had schayra, he had merchandise that he was able to sell for 6,000 zuz on Chol HaMoed. And he refrained from selling it because he wasn't going to do business on Chol HaMoed. So he held on to it until after Yom Tov. After Yom Tov, somebody came along and purchased all of that merchandise for 12,000 zuz. So he ended up selling it for double. Let's remember that all of our money and all of our success in business comes from the Ribbono Shel Olam. By doing the will of the Ribbono Shel Olam, we're not going to get hurt. So if Chazal say, don't do business on Chol HaMoed, don't do business on Chol HaMoed. The Ribbono Shel Olam will take care of you. Okay, continues the Mechaber, and the Mechaber says, Va'afilu im hilva mois, even if you lent somebody money, al menas sheyitna loy achar kach yayin ois chayra acheres, bepiroin chayvai kedei lehistaker. That was quite a lot. So now let me read it again and translate it in small bite-sized pieces. Va'afilu im hilva mois, even if you lent somebody money, al menas, on the condition sheyitu noloy acharkach, that the borrower would give you later on yayin, wine, oischayra acheres, or some other type of merchandise, bepiroin chayvai, in order to pay back the loan, kidei lihistaker, and he's giving you more merchandise than the face value of the loan. So you lent somebody $5,000 before Yom Tov, and the condition of the loan was he's not going to pay you back $5,000. What he's going to do is he's going to give you at a later date $7,500 worth of merchandise. Now, I know what you're thinking. Right away you're thinking, well, Rabbi Weiss, that can't be. That would be ribis. That would be interest. And we know that we're not allowed to loan money on interest. But if you learn the Gemara in Baba Metzia and Ezu Neshech, there are methods of lending, especially when it comes to this type of arrangement where you're lending money and you're getting back merchandise. There are ways that this can be rendered permissible. So obviously we're talking about a case where there's no problem of ribis involved. But in any case, the Mechaber is telling us over here, even if you lent somebody money before Yom Tov, and the condition of the loan was that he's going to pay you back merchandise that's worth more than the face value of the loan, Eino yachal leilech uletavam, you cannot go and collect that merchandise on Chol HaMoed, because collecting that merchandise on Chol HaMoed would in essence be doing business, right? Because take a look at what happened over here. Originally, you lent money. Now, we're going to see in Sif Beis that a normal straight loan, if you lend somebody $1,000 a month before Yom Tov, and the terms of the loan are that he's going to pay you back on Chol HaMoed, and now on Chol HaMoed you want to go collect your $1,000, you're allowed to do that on Chol HaMoed. Collecting a loan is not usher on Chol HaMoed. That's not called doing business. And there is no tircha involved in going and collecting a simple straight loan. So that's not usher. But that's not what's happening over here. Over here what's happening is you lent somebody $5,000. He's giving you back $7,500 worth of merchandise. So you gave money, you're receiving merchandise. When you get the merchandise, now this has turned into a purchase and a sale. You gave $5,000, you received merchandise. When do you want to get the merchandise? On Chol HaMoed. That means you're doing business on Chol HaMoed. So this, says the Mechaber, would be aser. Continuing now in the top line of Yud Amud Aleph, Eli im kain eino mitzuyim achar HaMoed, unless the situation is such that the merchandise that you're supposed to receive is not going to be available after Yom Tov. In that case, it would be mutter to have a davar aved im lo yelech b'chol HaMoed limekaimam v'yitvein. Now it would be a davar avud if you don't go and collect that merchandise. So now, we read a lot of the Mechaber over here. So what the Mechaber has said over here is, doing business on Chol HaMoed is forbidden, even in the most minute amount. And it doesn't matter if you're buying, doesn't matter if you're selling. It's all forbidden. The case that the Mechaber just gave me now, which is a chiddush, is a case where somebody lent money. Reuven lent Shimon $5,000. The upmach, the deal is that Shimon is going to pay back Reuven $7,500 worth of merchandise. You cannot go collect that merchandise on Chol HaMoed, because by going and collecting the merchandise on Chol HaMoed, you're now doing business on Chol HaMoed. You paid somebody $5,000 and you're getting back $7,500 worth of merchandise. That's forbidden unless it's a case of a davar aved. Why is it a davar aved? Let's say you're supposed to receive $7,500 worth of sets of pots, and that merchandise is no longer going to be available after Yom Tov, then it's a davar aved. If it's a davar aved, you're allowed to go collect it on Chol HaMoed. Now let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Ois cotton bays, back on Tesamid bays. Let's say you did this loan al menas sheyitnu loy, on the condition that he's going to give you merchandise worth more than the face value of the loan. Says the Chavetz Chaim, "Afilu lo hisna sheyitnu lo b'mayid." This is forbidden even if the fact that you're going to collect the pots and pans was on Chol HaMoed was not made part of the deal. When you set the terms of the loan, you didn't say, I'm going to collect it on Chol HaMoed. Still, this is aser. Fa'ayin b'biur halacha, and take a look in the biur halacha, the Chavetz Chaim says, where he writes, "Da'afilu einay tzarech leilech lemacham acher l'tvoya shehem ba'isa ha'ir." Even if you don't have to travel somewhere to collect the merchandise. You see, the words of the Mechaber were, "Eino yachal leilech u'letavam." He's not allowed to go and collect it. Points out the Chavetz Chaim, the problem over here is not the traveling. Even if you don't have to travel to go collect the merchandise, you're still not allowed to collect the merchandise. Gam kein oser. Damasha mekabel aschora mehem hu inyan mekach umemkar. Because the problem over here is that receiving the merchandise is what turns this deal into a business transaction that's forbidden on Chol HaMoed. So it's not the traveling that's the problem, it's the receipt of the merchandise that's the problem. So then why did the Mechaber say, Eino yachal leilechu l'tavam? Why did the Mechaber mention the point that you're going to travel? This explains the Chavetz Chaim on Yud Amud Aleph, Mishum Seifa. The Mechaber only wrote the point of traveling for the novelty that he's going to say later on. The fact that in the case of a davar ha'avud, in the case where the merchandise is not going to be available after Yom Tov, muter leilech achareim afilu be'ir acheres. You see, in the case of heter, in the case where it's a davar ha'avud and therefore it's mutter, there's a bigger chiddush in saying that you're even allowed to go travel to go pick up the merchandise and travel back with the merchandise. That's why the Mechaber puts this in the context of traveling. Ois cotton gimel, eino mitzuyim. If the merchandise is not going to be available anymore after Yom Tov, then you're allowed to collect it on Chol HaMoed. Says the Chavetz Chaim in Ois cotton gimel, for hu adin, the same halacha would apply in mitam acher yuchal lovay lidei hefsid im lo yitva achshav. So too, in any case where the merchandise might get ruined if you don't go claim it right now. Let's say you're supposed to go ahead and collect something that's perishable. And if you don't collect it now and putting it into storage, it's going to get ruined. So then you're allowed to collect it on Chol HaMoed because it's a davar ha'avud. Ois cotton dalid, the havelei davar ha'avud, v'dafka im lo kiven lechatchila zman kabbalas haschora b'moed. This is a very important Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah points out over here, if you went ahead when you made this loan, let's say a month before Yom Tov, if you made the terms of the loan that you're going to collect the merchandise on Chol HaMoed, now you have a problem because now it's kivein malachtoi lamoyed. Now you intentionally set out that you're going to do malacha on Chol HaMoed, right? So if you set out that you're going to go ahead and you're going to collect merchandise, which is going to become a davar ha'avud because it's not going to be available after Yom Tov, the whole heter of davar ha'avud, remember, we learned this already previously, but whenever you have something that's mutter for a davar ha'avud, it's only mutter if you didn't plan it for Chol HaMoed. If you planned it in advance for Chol HaMoed, then it's kivein malachtoi lamoyed. You intentionally planned to do malacha on Chol HaMoed that you're not allowed to do. So too over here. When is it mutter to go collect the merchandise? If the merchandise became available on Chol HaMoed and it's not going to be available after Yom Tov, then you're allowed to collect it on Chol HaMoed because if you don't, it's a davar ha'avud. But if you planned initially from before Yom Tov that this merchandise is going to be collected on Chol HaMoed, then it's kivein malachtoi lamoyed. Then you set out intentionally to do something which is forbidden because of tercha on Chol HaMoed. You're not allowed to do that. In that case, we would penalize you and you're not allowed to go collect it. Now you might say, but over here we're not dealing with malacha, we're only dealing with tercha. Let's remember, I should have mentioned this at the outset of the shir. We're going to see that in certain ways doing business is more kal. We treat it more leniently than other instances of doing malacha on Chol HaMoed. And the reason for that is conducting business is not usher because of malacha. There's no malacha involved in buying and selling. Even on Shabbos, the reason doing business is also on Shabbos is not because it's a malacha. It's an issa d'Rabbanan shema yavai lichtov. We're afraid that you're going to come to write different kinds of documents. And writing is an issa d'oraisa. Writing is a malacha. So the whole reason the conducting of business is aser is only because of Gzeira, but it's not malacha. Therefore, we do treat conducting business on Chol HaMoed more leniently than performing other types of malacha on Chol HaMoed. So this is something that's only also because of tircha. It's not also because of malacha. Still in all, if you're kivein malachtoi lamoyed, if you initially plan on doing something which is also because of tircha on Chol HaMoed, we don't allow you to do it. And we could see this earlier already in the Mishnah Berurah in Siman Tavkuf Lamed Ches on Tes Amid Aleph in Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Yud Aleph. Over there, the Mechaber was talking about, let's say you have produce that's out in the field, or other types of merchandise that's located in a place where it's not protected, and you want to bring it in, mipnei aganovim. You're afraid it's going to get stolen. Over there's no question of malacha. Over there's a question of tircha. And yet the Chavetz Chaim said in Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Yud Aleph, the gam bazeh, in this case also, v'chein b'chol davar ha'ovid, and so too by anything which is mutter on Chol HaMoed because it's a davar ha'ovid, aser lechavein lechatchila, you're not allowed to initially plan lahashais ad hamoed, to make this malacha wait and be performed on Chol HaMoed, even if it's v'afta ha'achnasa hu rak tircha ba'alma. Even though bringing in the merchandise so it shouldn't get stolen is not also because of malacha. It's only also because of tircha. Still in all, you're not allowed to initially plan to do that malacha on Chol HaMoed. So too over here, you're not allowed to initially plan to pick up this merchandise in return for your loan on Chol HaMoed. Even though it might be a davar ha'ovid, still, that's only if it happens to fall out in Chol HaMoed, then it's a davar ha'ovid, then you could do it. But you cannot plan to do it on Chol HaMoed. Now we go to the second line in the Shulchan Aruch, to the words of the Ramah. Hagah, says the Ramah. Mihu, however, even though we're saying that the conducting of business is forbidden on Chol HaMoed, if you have an opportunity to make a significant profit on Chol HaMoed, limkar b'tzina, you're allowed to sell, and the Mishnah Berurah is going to say not only to sell but also to purchase. So you are allowed to make purchases and sales on Chol HaMoed if you have an opportunity to make a significant amount of profit, limkar b'tzina, if you do it b'tzina, if you do it discreetly. But there's another qualification over here. It says the Ramah, v'yoytzi l'simchas yomtiv yoyser mimasha hayadaita l'hoytzi. And then you should spend more money l'kavod yomtiv than you were originally planning to. So that now it turns out that some of this profit that you're making on Chol HaMoed is going to be put to yomtiv use. So for example, if you're in the business of buying and selling electronics on Amazon, go to Pomegranate and buy